Hey there, Lorcana players. This is Justice, and I'm here to talk about the set champs that I played this weekend for Blue Steel. Just two small local events, 11 players on Saturday and 14 on Sunday. I managed to finish second place in the Saturday event and top four in the Sunday event today. There's some stats on the page about which matchups I faced and what my match results were, and I'm going to go ahead and get into the deck lists. On Saturday, I looked to play this list that is really looking to be more of a tempo-style Blue Steel mid-range list. So no aerial, no Tamatoa, no dime. I've opted for more impactful answers in some of my higher-end character slots and to play McDuck Manor as my alternative win condition without those cards. The general strategy here is to play enough early game threat coverage like the Calhoun and the Fire the Cannons to check any immediate threats, and then to sort of safely scale into the sort of Cogsworth, Beast, Gaston, Tinkerbell for the mid, and then to really just finish at 7 with the Hades Arthur Sima package. You play McDuck Manor pretty much any chance you get where your opponent lets off the gas for a little bit, so it's great into turns post B-Prep or pre-B-Prep, depending on sort of the board state. If you have a lot of characters developed already, playing the McDuck Manor is a great way to put an awkward threat onto your opponent's board state when their only option for the turn is to B-Prep you, or let you gain a whole bunch of lore or value from your existing characters. And then from there, you just have to work on protecting it, which with the Hades and the Zeuses is actually fairly easy. They're sort of our equivalent to the Tremaine or Medusa package that you might find in the Ed-style Ruby Amethyst decks with Tremaine, or how Ruby Sapphire would play Maleficent Dragon or Medusa. This list worked fairly well. I somewhat missed the extra copies of Grab Your Swords due to the number of green steel matchups that I had to play on the day. They were the reason I included the Cogsworths, and I often found myself wishing that I had that third copy, but the card is also a real liability into some of the other matchups, particularly Red Ruby Sapphire, and I just don't want to see it there. Or at all, really. I would like to never have to use swords, but it felt like I was missing it, and this will be relevant when we look at the list I played on Sunday. For the most part, this package worked really well. The Beast worked exceptionally well. The one dock works really well to sort of occasionally refill you, right? You can't break if you have two. I liked one Gaston in place of the aerials as sort of an unthinkable 6 cost. My thought was that he quests for 3 no matter what anyway. He trades up slightly better with the 4 attack stat line, and in exchange for reward, you get to develop your brain for your top 3, and that sort of helps keeps the gas going in this deck, which does tend to fall off a little bit in the later game because we don't have Tamatoa to add back the popsicle to keep cycling our items in our draw. Hades and Arthur really work well in a list like this at 2 copies because they're reliable threats you can use to keep playing for tempo. I think the 2 Hades in particular are standout includes for Blue Steel if you can make the uninkable space. For Sunday, I changed the list a little bit because there are a few different things I wanted to try. I was expecting more aggro, and so I decided to make room for the Captain Hooks by taking out the Cogsworth. And then I actually cut back on some of the 7-cost threats and the Gaston to make room for 2 aerial, as well as the 3rd copy of Grab Your Swords. For the most part, I think these changes were mixed. The hooks did a fair bit of work, and they were very helpful today. But the aerials were sort of reliably underwhelming. They were good sometimes, and at other times, just being an unthinkable 6 cost that doesn't replace itself didn't really make up for the fact that if you don't have an item, which you might think unlikely in this deck, but like I was saying, without Tamatoa to add them back, you do occasionally find yourself with an item drought in the mid to late game. And so I had a couple scenarios today where Ariel was just questing for 3 and wasn't really doing all that else for me. And so I think she took away some of the power in this list, particularly in losing the additional copies of Hades and Arthur. I played the 3rd copy of Swords at the expense of the 3rd copy of Cannons. This change was mostly fine outside of the red-blue semifinal match where I drew all 3 of my swords off my mulligan and my draws on turn 2, both for turn and off of sail. Really felt like a sign to cut this card for good, which is, I think, something I'll be looking at doing when I revise these lists for next weekend. Overall, I think I missed the Tamatoa somewhat. Not having a way to add your items back as you get further on into the game really cuts your ability to keep cycling your resources and keep putting pressure on the opponent. And the 8/5 body is just as big as Sword of Simba and just as hard for most opponents to remove. Ruby Amethyst and Amber Steel both find it very awkward to deal with efficiently, and Ruby Sapphire needs to continue to find answers for your big late game threats. So I think I'm still happy to not be playing the Dime, and I would like to find room to put the Tamatoas back in. In a list like this, it would probably be cut 2 Ariel, play an additional Hades, and then find some cuts to make room for the Tamatoa to come back in. I didn't find I missed Cogsworth as much today, but I did want a replacement 5-drop in his slot to help out with some of the steel matchups. I think I'm going to consider looking at Qianpo, and I'll post builds to Twitter when I think I've got something together that makes sense.